Hello, my name is Dr. Jackalyn Rainosek, and I'm with DTP-Leadership Group. And this is Hot Topic Bold Talk. I'm happy to be back providing podcasts because I'm particularly focusing right now on gerrymandering, since there is so much going on about it. And you were very lucky to hear in podcast 139 my friend Richard Wilson, who's an outstanding lawyer, and he provides you all kinds of information about the courts and how things can be fought like gerrymandering. I want to provide, though, today additional information in podcast 140. It's cheating to win, gerrymandering, and the fight for fair representation is the title of this podcast. Now, in 139, Richard and I ask you to join us in exploring the legal dimensions of gerrymandering. His legal expertise gave us a window into how the courts shape this struggle for fair representation. So what I'm going to do in 140 is I'm going to go much further. I will examine how Texas has engineered one of the most racially divisive congressional maps in modern history, and how gerrymandering works and why it is such a threat to democracy, and how this practice distorts Congress itself. I will also bring you stories of resistance, like the Wisconsin activists who successfully rolled back a Republican map that was rigged. And I will call out some action statements from Vice President Kamala Harris. And I will try to remind you as I go through this experience of talking about gerrymandering, what we truly missed when some of you voted for Trump and got him elected, and we could have had Kamala Harris as president of the United States. So let me go through and really talk about gerrymandering. Trump's roadmap really is based on his MAGA Republicans will never have to vote again. Trump made a chilling promise that if he were reelected, his MAGA Republicans would never have to vote again. These words were not bravado. They were a blueprint. And there's so many things that I think you missed, those of you that voted for Trump, because you missed all his messages about what he was really going to do, not what he was going to do for you. Gerrymandering has become the core tool for fulfilling his promises. By manipulating congressional districts, Trump and his allies ensure that even unpopular choices like his One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which cuts health care, education, and cancer research, cannot be overturned at the ballot box. Texas is at the fourth line of this strategy. And already states like Missouri and Indiana are considering following Texas's lead. So what is gerrymandering and how does it work? And I've given you several references, which I always do with my podcast. But the ones I'm using are from the New York Times on June 27, 2019. There's the Brennan Center for Justice, and then I use the Britannica because they have updated information on gerrymandering. The practice of manipulating the boundaries of electoral districts to give one political party an unfair advantage over the other is what gerrymandering is. There are two main ways to use gerrymandering: cracking, spreading opposition voters across many districts so they cannot form a majority anywhere. And that's what Texas has done, cracking. Two, though, is the second way is packing, concentrating opposition voters into just a few districts, like they try to do in Alabama, wasting their votes and reducing the overall influence. Now we know that African Americans in Alabama were able to get a second district by the Supreme Court ruling. The word gerrymander, as Richard talked about, originated in 1812 when the Massachusetts governor, Elbridge Gerry, signed a redistricting bill that included a salamander-shaped district designed to benefit his party. So I know we've talked about it in podcast 139, but let's look at the effects of it. The effects are profound because manipulating district lines, politicians can win more seats than their share of the vote, which they would normally be allowed. It's subverting the democratic principles of one person, one vote. The damage to our democracy is the following, and I'm drawing from the Smithsonian Magazine and HistoryNet and Wikipedia. And so you can look those up yourself. I didn't include them in my references for this particular podcast. But we see gerrymandering corrodes the impact on the American democracy. One of the things it does is it undermines representative democracy. Politicians choose their voters, creating safe districts where accountability disappears. The second thing is it distorts political representation. A party can win more seats than it actual vote share, while minority communities are packed into impotence. 3, it increases partisanship. With safe seats, extreme candidate thrives and shutting down moderates and those that have a right to be represented. 4, it reduces voter engagement. When outcomes are predetermined, voters disengage and lose faith. And 5, what it does, it provides a constitutional concern. Racial gerrymandering may violate both the 15th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act, yet the Supreme Court has failed sometimes to establish clear standards, as we well know. This is not absurd that I'm talking about. It is happening in Texas. Now, I want to talk about the Texas racial division by design. Representative Vince Perez of El Paso, in his August 2025 Time magazine article, exposes how Texas Republicans engineered their map. And here's what I want to describe to you. It is very disturbing. Demographics are being ignored. Nearly 60% of Texans are people of color. Nearly 60% of Texans are people of color, and 90% of the population growth has come from Latino and Black communities. Yet white voters are positioned to control 26 of 38 seats. They're trying to get 5 more. The mathematical inequality is shocking. One congressional district can be secured by about 440,000 white residents. It takes 1.4 million Latino representatives or 2 million Black representatives to secure the same representation. It's a fact. The facts are disturbing. It's a fake Latino majority district that's been also created. By splitting barrios and adding Anglo precincts, map makers have created districts that look diverse on paper but deliver power to the white voters. Perez warned that these maps don't just entrench a party, they entrench a racial hierarchy, teaching communities of color that their ballots are worthless. by this design. And then we have to look at something else. The New York Times by David Goodman in August of 29 recently documents the steps that the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, who signed the bill to redistrict, is really doing it because Trump told him to. And what Trump is trying to do is cover the fact that his one big, beautiful map that he's asked Abbott to create is just as bad as his big, beautiful bill. So Abbott has developed 5 Democratic seats to be Republican, cementing the GOP dominance. And Abbott claims the map ensures fairer representation, but the truth is obvious. It is engineered to entrench Republican power mid-decade outside the normal census cycle. The redistricting fight overshadows urgent disaster relief after the catastrophic hill country floods that killed 135 people. We don't care about them, but we're going to be sure we're going to do what Trump tells us to do. Those 135 people included children. Instead of prioritizing relief, Abbott and his allies have prioritized Trump's agenda. And the gerrymandering wasn't the only racially destructive move. During the same special session by Republicans, a bathroom bill targets transgender Texans. A law blocks abortion medications by enabling lawsuits against shippers like Federal Express. And it expands power for the Attorney General to investigate elections. Our Attorney General is just as corrupt as Trump and Abbott. These measures, once too extreme even for Texas Republicans, sailed through under Trump's directive to upend the status quo. The so-called one big beautiful map is not just a redistricting plan, it's a part of a full spectrum authoritarian agenda. And how this goes is gerrymandering broadens the effect on the Congress. Research from the Brenham Center and the New American highlights how gerrymandering tilts national power. It is distorting representation. The ruling party wins seats disproportionate to its votes. You can think about the statistics I just gave you about the population of Texas. It entrenches partisan control. Safe districts guarantee continued power despite changing voter preferences. It's reducing the competition. Election become meaningless. The primaries elect extremists. It is exacerbating the polarization that's going on in America. Its dysfunctional is a growth. And as we see it today in the House, where Republicans block bipartisan solutions like the border deal they themselves demanded before Trump ordered it to not be approved. It's underlining the legitimate actions of law. When Congress doesn't reflect the people, the citizens lose faith in the democracy itself. Now, just a few years ago, we had an example of Wisconsin and its method of resisting Republicans. There is hope if we follow it. In Wisconsin, activists such as Bill Pincy's and coalitions of Democrats and Republicans fought to end Republican gerrymandering. Their efforts restored competitive districts and Democrats gained control, not by gaming this system, but by finally letting voters' voices be heard. Wisconsin proves that when people are organized and fight for fair maps, changes are possible. And that's what we have to do in Texas and any place else, is speak out and refuse to support these actions. Now, I got an email from Kamala Harris, since I get them often. And she, I think, really captures in the moment what is happening. Know that this is one thing, she says, cheating to maintain power. Republicans know they can't win if they don't cheat. That is why I'm proud that right here in California, the voters will lead the fight for fairness. I hope you're donating, volunteering, and sharing the news about this election with your friends. It is time to fight fire with fire. That is what this moment requires. And she talks about, in this email, about the fact that there is very little support for Trump's big, beautiful bill. In fact, it's disastrous, and it touches so many people that need our help. And in a democracy, we help our friends. We help those that live in America. And that's not what the one big, beautiful bill does. So here's the thing that she calls out to us. We need to fight for our democracy, and it requires us not just to be outraged, but to take action. And here's how I want to end this podcast. From Trump's boast that his MAGA Republicans would never have to vote again, to Abbott's signing of the one big, beautiful map, to the racial engineering detailed by Vance Perez, the story is the same. Gerrymandering is being weaponized to cheat Americans of fair representation. This is not politics usual. It is the manipulation of a democracy itself, and it carries with it a racial hierarchy that demeans Latinos and Black Texans, and it will do the same thing in any state that has the audacity to use gerrymandering to redistrict their map. It undermines the votes of these individuals. And Missouri and Indiana are preparing to discuss this and follow through. But there's another story, the story of Wisconsin. The story of Kamala Harris is called to fight back. The story of citizens who refuse to accept minority rule, which is exactly what's happening in Texas. If you look at the statistics, 60% of Texans are persons of color. Does that really meet our American destiny and our American thought? I don't think so. That is why Rich Wilson and I will continue to bring you monthly discussions of the courts and the law, and why we must unite against party lines to call out racial gerrymandering for what it is. It is cheating to maintain power. Democracy is not self-sustaining. It requires us, all of us, to fight for fairness, resist corruption that we see every day with Trump's administration, and demand a government that reflects the people, not a minority that are extremists. In our new podcast, which I will do about 141, I will return to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and give more information that was already given before. We'll talk about the periods of reauthorization that protect us from abuses like these that we are experiencing now, and the Supreme Court's devastating decision, Shelby County versus Holder, which we have discussed previously, but I want to show how it truly stripped away the protection and gave states like Texas a free hand to racially engineer their maps. I will provide further information that was not covered before. So I want you to fully understand what gerrymandering is, and what we want is to have fair representation in America. And that is not what is going to happen. Now, we'll see what the Supreme Court does with the Texas map. My concern is the Supreme Court has been so severely affected by Trump. And he can affect it in the future. So we as Americans have to march, have to speak out, have to demand things from our states, that we have free representation for every person in this country, that we do not support gerrymandering. Thank you so much for listening to me.